Hey, and welcome to Trail Trials, a video review section of iRunFar.com. My name is Travis Lyles, and in this review, we're going to take a look at the Saucony Peregrine, number 15. Let's start off with the specs about this shoe. So this maintains a very similar silhouette to what the Peregrine has really been throughout the years, and that's low profile shoe that's fairly luggy. This thing clocks in at 9.7 ounces in a men's size 9, and that is a women's 7 sample size, 8.4 ounces for that. You have a 28 millimeter heel and a 24 millimeter toe, so a 4 millimeter drop. You have 5 millimeter luggy outsole, so that tradition continues. There's some updated foam, but a lot of this fairly similar to the last version. So with all that said, let's get up close and personal. Let's see what this shoe is all about. All right, so let's start off by talking about the outsole, because that's really where I think the Peregrine kind of makes its identity, is really in this luggy outsole. So it uses the Power Track compound, which is Saucony's kind of proprietary. I think it's a good compound. I'd say it's fairly in the middle. It's not like super high friction, like a Vibram Mega Grip or something like that. Like, I feel like in really slick, wet, kind of, you know, if you're on like rocks or something that are mossy, which is pretty prevalent here in the Pacific Northwest, this doesn't do super great, but I think outside of that, it does a really good job, right? It's got plenty of grip. It's got plenty of bite, especially with all these lugs. You have the forward-facing lugs in the front in this sort of triangle pattern. You have a transition here in the inner part of the arch area that's a little bit forward and a little bit backwards. And then on the backwards, you've got kind of on these outside edges, I guess, where you would more than likely be sort of digging in. You've got rearward-facing lugs that sort of trap and, you know, catch the grit and give you some more braking power. So overall, these 5 millimeter lugs do a really good job in just about anything. They do well over rocky and dry and, of course, mud. As long as it's not like overly soupy, which most shoes don't do a good job in, these do great. And so Pacific Northwest in wintertime, it's kind of wet and damp and gross all the time. I've not noticed anything too outrageous about this shoe. In fact, I've always felt fairly confident going uphill and downhill in these shoes. Some things of note here are the rock plate is made out of a fabric. You can kind of scratch at it and sort of feel that. It's this tightly woven little plate that that's in here, so it's not overly stiff, which is kind of nice. You can get some movement to it. That rock plate stops at the front of the shoe and doesn't exist in the back. Though you do have full sort of coverage of rubber, there aren't really kind of open, exposed, just midsole foam sections. These are all outsole material. And so if something does poke through, it's not just poking directly into the foam, which I think is nice. And especially still being able to keep the shoe under 10 ounces. All right, so let's move on to the midsole. And in this version, it uses the Power Track. And just for a reference sake here, I'm gonna pull the 14 here as well. You can see that the tread pattern's fairly similar, and in fact, this midsole is fairly similar as well. I think the 15 is a little more sleek and a little less bulbous than, say, the 14 is. I don't know that that's anything more than aesthetics. They feel fairly similar. The only difference that I'll call out is definitely the density of the foam, and the new 15 has a slightly softer foam, and you can just feel it just by squeezing it. You can feel it by stepping into it. It's not a lot, but it definitely is just a touch softer, I think, than the version of the 14 here. And just wanted to give kind of an example of that. But this is Power Run foam, and that is all the way around. It's single density foam. Again, this is a low profile shoe. You're looking at 28 millimeters on the heel and 24 millimeters on the toe. So it is a low profile, low drop. This foam is middle. Again, it's not overly springy and it's not overly firm. So it's sort of a good in-between in terms of what you're gonna go out and do. There's nothing mechanical in here. There's no extra, you know, blocking or carbon plates or anything like that. This is a standard single density foam, but it is a pretty good foam that I think performs well in a lot of different areas, from road to trail concrete. You can run on a treadmill in these. I tend to just run shoes through the gamut of different running scenarios. And I think overall, is a road shoe quicker? Sure. Can you get by with this if you're running a big long race and part of it is on a road and this is a shoe you're wearing? Yeah, you absolutely can. One thing here that I'll call out that I tend to do with Sauconys is this liner here, this sock liner. And this actually is their Power Run Plus. And so the sock liner is not just a piece of EVA foam. And the benefit here is that, one, it's really comfortable. It's got a little bit of extra cushion and kind of spring to it, which is nice. But the other part is it doesn't pit out. And because this is the same type of foam that in a lot of their road shoes, which are more bouncy and springy, I don't think you'd want this same foam for an entire road or trail shoe, excuse me, because it would, I think, kind of bottom out and be a little bit squirrely, especially as you were like stomping hard and taking corners and stuff. I don't think this foam is really good for that, but for this application, I always like this, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, I wish more shoe companies would do something like this because the comfort level is high and your midsole sock liner, you know, the thing that sits on top of your midsole, does not like pit out like a lot of other ones do. You know, you'll get that like deep pitting where your toes sit, especially if they're wet and you kind of wear them through a season. These tend to stay like nice and flexible and add just a little bit of extra bounce that I think is while minimal, definitely noticeable to me when I compare it to, say, other types of midsoles. All right, so let's move up to the upper here. And I think just like the rest of the shoe, fairly simple in terms of what's going on here. It's mostly mesh, right? Just kind of a single kind of socky fit type of mesh. There's not a lot of stitching. There's not a lot of really other stuff going on. The overlays are all this laminated rubber. So here at the toe cap, which is pretty strong at the front, and then as it kind of moves out from this kind of area, gets a little bit less thick and a little bit less dense, but it provides enough protection, keep the mud out, keep the sort of low moisture out from the shoe, and you'll see that little bit of a mud guard all the way around the shoe, just here at the base. And one of the things in previous versions of Sauconys was that they would start to kind of tear up in some of these pinch points. That looks like that's been taken care of. I've got about 100, maybe a little over 100 miles in sort of wet, gross Pacific Northwest conditions, and these things have done well, and I've not babied them and, you know, washed them every single time I came home or anything like that. So overall, the upper's performing well. It breathes well. It drains well. Nothing really too exciting about it, right? You're not getting a bunch of, you know, different stretchy 3D meshes. It's just kind of classic mesh here, and I think for the purpose of what's going on here, works extremely well. From the lacing system standpoint, there is a gator hook here at the bottom. The lacing is fairly standard all the way until here. And just like what was introduced in the 14, where they added these little bit of extra loops, they've taken away the 2 and they've added 1. So there's one eyelet here where you could choose to use the regular eyelet, or you can use these little extra loops. And if you look inside, they're not just aesthetic. Right here, this is that eyelet, and it extends down to really create sort of a wrap on your foot without putting all the pressure sort of right at the top of your foot. So it pushes that out a little bit. It adds this anchoring system, and I think does a pretty good job of like locking your foot in. And again, for a low profile shoe with high grip, you may want to go, you know, turn it over in these. And I think this is a shoe that stays underfoot, at least for me, you know, and let you do what you want to do, and you don't have to worry about it being sloppy or loose. Like, you can get this shoe locked down, and I think these little, you know, additions here of having this sort of anchoring system that kind of completes a function from here down to the midsole versus just being laces here in the middle. I don't know if it's gimmicky or not, but I feel like it actually does a purpose, and I feel like it enhances the fit of the shoe. The tongue is fairly standard. It's not gusseted all the way to the top, but it is pretty close. It actually is to about right here, so it's not a full sock liner, but it definitely has a pretty good amount of kind of stretchy mesh that sits here and allows your foot to just sort of slide in, creates a nice little sock-like fit in the shoe. One of the things I'm very happy about is there's no like crazy gravel catcher that comes off the back of this. So you have a slightly soft kind of spot here at the heel, and then as it transitions down to the heel cup, it's a much kind of firmer, like solid, I think classic heel cup that you would see in a, you know, everyday kind of running shoe. So overall, I think this package kind of checks a lot of boxes. There's not a lot of gimmicks here going on. It's really just about, you know, get your foot in, lock it down, and let you go do a run. In closing, I think if you were to do like a Wikipedia entry on trail shoe, I think the Peregrine is one of those shoes that would like, could be the main image for it. It's just kind of a trail shoe. There's not a lot of gimmicks here. There's not a lot of you know, extraneous things going on. You're not getting sold like a carbon fiber plate or, you know, some sort of insane various types of rubbers on the outsoles. And look, all those things are super cool, and obviously in a sport where you could be in a lot of different places, a lot of different terrains and environments, there are times where all of those different kind of technologies come in handy. But that's not what the Peregrine is. The Peregrine is a shoe that you can kind of throw on regardless of what's going on, and it's gonna get the job done. So it's grippy, it's fairly quick feeling, it's lightweight, it drains pretty well. All the stuff that you'd like, yeah, if I need kind of these core functions in a trail shoe, I feel like the Peregrine does. A couple years ago, I wouldn't have said that. They kind of fell off of, I think, their initial path of what the Peregrine was, and it sort of became something different. This has got enough protection, enough grip, enough kind of good foam and sock liner and fit that you can just do a lot in this shoe and really not have to think about too much. And in today's climate, the fact that this thing comes in at $140, it's kind of a steal by today's pricing of shoes. And you know, I've got over 100 miles on these, and I don't have any mesh tearing up. I don't feel like they're broke down too bad or that they're wearing out in any sort of weird way. So all in all, I mean, I think this is a thumbs up. This is a good shoe if you're looking for something lighter, grippier, kind of get you through the sloppy part of the year, but also be able to, you know, use all the time, do some hybrid stuff. This is a good option. So questions, comments, throw those below the video. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.